O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
Hey everybody, episode 124 coming at you. It is a beautiful day here in Montana, and I'm joined by Pat Durkin. Say hey, Pat.
Nice talking to you, Ben.
It's good to have you on. It's long overdue. If you don't know anything about Pat, shame on you, you bastards. Go over to themeateater.com and find his contributor page. You'll have hours and hours and hours of wonderful reading of all the stuff that Pat's done over the last... How long you been writing for Meat Eater, Pat?
Just almost 2 years now.
That's awesome.
I think I got my first assignment from Steve in early May of 2018. So, yeah, almost 2 years.
Well, that's awesome. We also have Spencer Newharth. Say hey, Spencer.
Hey, Ben. Hey, Pat. And hey, Phil.
Nice seeing you.
The baritone badass. We're gonna get to. I was just reading your article, Spencer, about Three Toes. We're gonna get to the legend of Three Toes here in a moment. But there's been a lot of people out of your neck of the woods, South Dakota, that have pretty awesome nicknames. You know, as you wrote in the article. So I'll let you go through that later. But you need to think about if the baritone badass is something you want to stick or not. You need to think about it.
Okay.
And then we have Phil, first crap in the woods, Taylor. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Ben. How's it going?
Good. Are you ready for what's about to go down?
Not at all. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I was just telling everybody before we hit record here that we were inundated, as one might expect, with first crap in the woods stories / my dog eats human feces stories. As much as I love reading both of those, I'm a little worn out, a little burned out. I tried to read them all, so thank you for everybody for sending them in. Phil, how's it been on your end? You've been getting a lot of feedback. Has it been really just taking over your life? It's a big deal.
It's not quite taken over my life yet, but I went for a beautiful hike this weekend in the Gallatin Canyon. Posted a little Instagram story, just thinking I would just put some good content out there in the world. Instead, I was just inundated with replies along the lines of, hey, why didn't you take a shit up there? Or, hey, go take a crap behind that tree.
That's
so
right.
This to thank you and thank the audience for this.
Yeah, I'd like to also thank them. Please forward me every single one of those comments. This is what keeps me going during quarantine. It's this kind of chatter. We have so many emails, Pat Durkin. I don't know if I can't even read them all. There's so many. There's like 1,000-word stories. There's a bunch, but Bryant Lumman wrote in, and he said that I'm going to have to summarize as many of these as I can, but he was taking a shit in the woods, his first shit in the woods in Wisconsin, and your neck of the woods there. and he went to squat to take the shit, and he forgot that a lot of times when you take a shit, you also urinate. And so he peed into his pants while he had cleared the back end. The front end wasn't clear. And so, as he says, he started pissing directly into my pants that were around my ankles. He said, I was able to redirect and minimize the damage, but I still had to drop a few wet layers when I got back to the car. Luckily, it was getting warmer, and they weren't really needed by then. So that's really what we're going through. Pat, you've been telling me you got a few gems from this genre. You want to lay one out there? You can leave the names out if you wish.
Yeah. Well, the first one that made me laugh was I got the kick out of Phil's story that I was telling my wife about it, and I said, Phil, I'm guessing, Phil, you must be about late 20s.
That's right, 29.
Okay, and I said something like, yeah, Phil's late 20s and has never taken a crap in the woods. And my wife got this thoughtful look in her face. She's 61, and she says, yeah, I don't think I have either. So that kind of shocked me, because I've taken them, when the kids were around, we used to go up to Canada every summer and go fishing, and we used to make bathroom breaks quite often. I'd drop them off in these islands, and then Penny would go off the girls in the woods and come back, and I kind of assumed that would happen at some point, but apparently not. Then the other one was, again, involving my daughters. I used to always take them up to the Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which is about a 4-hour drive straight north of me. And I'd go up there and spend the weekend with them, scouting deer and looking for places to hunt. And they were all preschoolers when I first started doing that. And I brought them home and came home from work one day. And my wife was somewhat amused, but also a little bit irritated that we used to live right on Main Street in a town called Amarillo, Wisconsin, which is west of Oshkosh, Wisconsin geography at all. And apparently my daughters decided to go to the bathroom out there in the front lawn of our yard on Main Street. And first, I was kind of proud of them, but my wife wasn't all that thrilled. So I kind of explained to them that there's proper places to go outside, and there's improper places to go outside, and the yard is not a proper place for this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
that was my tamer version of a Phil story.
Phil's story really, Pat, is bringing people together. So many people have realized through this that both their dogs are, don't need help. They are normal. And people have these realizations that they have never crapped in the woods either. I got a lot of those too. A lot of those messages on Instagram. People like, I never thought about that. I've never taken a shit in the woods before. And so it's really a story of, coming together around a tough time to talk about these issues, and be open about what you're doing out there. Spencer, you got anything to add here?
My favorite story was of this buddy's uncle, and they were out for opening day of deer hunting. And there was this weird shift that I feel like happened maybe like 15 or 20 years ago, where prior to that, every deer hunter, hardcore or like amateur or really casual or otherwise, everybody wore like these one-piece jumpsuit bibs that were made by Carhartt or Dickies or whoever. Is that familiar to you guys, or is that like a regional thing where I'm from? Did everybody at one point just like wear these giant one-piece bibs?
Yeah. That was common, especially I remember in the 70s when I started hunting. Those are real common.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I started hunting, that's all we wore.
And that's like funny to think about. Like I can't imagine that's ever going to show up in a First Light website is, the whole one-piece bib suit. But anyway, that's just like what everybody wore. And it's worth knowing that for this story. This uncle had to take a crap and did his business and finished up and went to pull up his one-piece thing and flung his hood over his head and also just threw feces like all over himself because he didn't account for the fact that he had just taken off this entire layer of clothing that was right below. And then that's where some of it landed. So that was a different time, certainly.
All right. Well, Spencer, I don't I've never had any emergency situations like that, but everybody's had their stories. So it's good. Like I said, it's like gathering around a campfire. But that campfire is a pile of shit in Phil's case. So thank you. I just want to say thank you, Phil. We're going to let that go. Thanks for all the emails. Keep sending them in. We may do a whole podcast where we just read these. I tried to count. I've been trying to count since we hit record, and we're over 100 emails, and a lot, like some of the, I could just read you some of the Phil's poopy predicament, Phil's first pile in the woods, Phil's dog problem, canoes, shitting, and friendship. So there's just so many great emails in there. So I'm sorry I can't read them all, but we don't want to hover too long on this topic, lest we turn into a whole different podcast. So it's an easy transition. Michael Skall wrote in. He said, and the title of his email was "Would you eat it?" And you may know of this area. Another Wisconsinite, Pat. He said he owns some land in the Poplar River near Poplar, Wisconsin.
Okay, it's way up there.
He's way up there in the hinterlands. Yeah. He said, every day I drive over the river twice on my way to and from work. One evening as I crossed the bridge, I noticed two dark subjects hung up on a snag in the river below. I had to investigate what was going on. As my dog and I went down closer, I saw that this was two Jake turkeys that had been dumped off the bridge. This is not an uncommon sight, but when I pulled them to the shore, I was disgusted at what I saw. The Jakes were simply breasted and then tossed out. A thought ran through my head. These cannot be but a day old because they weren't here this morning, and they were in the cool water of the river all day. I wonder if I can save the legs. His question to us is, what would we do? Would we take the legs and cook them up and eat them? I think he actually did, but he wanted to know, is he just desperate, or do we think that's a good idea? Pat, what do you think about that?
My initial reaction, they say when this must have just happened, huh?
Yeah, it must have just happened. He didn't say exactly when, but this spring.
My first reaction is say definitely take them, at least take them and then check them out. But I'm guessing that it'd still be in good shape, because it's been pretty cold. It's only early May. Waters are still running cold up there. I'd say it's a pretty good chance they were still good. So I guess that'd be my answer.
Spencer,
I'd be eating them.
Me too, Spencer.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I would have done it. I would have taken them for sure. But it would be difficult to come upon an animal that you don't know how long it's been there, or who put it there, or what might be in that water, and be like, yeah, I'd take it. So I'm not real confident that I would. And I'm somebody who's all for taking roadkill, or if someone has excess game that they're not interested in cleaning themselves or gutting, I'm all for taking that. But that would be a tough situation, and I really commend him if he did do it.
Well, here's his story. He said, I decided I would remove the two sets of legs and take them up to the house for closer inspection. I cleaned them up the best I could, but they had a very pale color from being in the river for 8 hours. That night, I put all four in the crock pot and let them cook all night while I slept, dreaming of my own turkey hunt that would be coming in the middle of May. In the end, I did eat a few bites of meat, but the smell of the cooked meat was not as I remembered. In the end, his dog June enjoyed a few nights of cooked dark turkey meat with her kibble. That's till then, keep your powder dry and your whistle wet. Michael Skall. I like what he did there. I'm all for it. I feel like you take the meat, you examine it, and then if you feel like you can go through the next step, you cook it up. And then if it's not to your liking, and there's a dog running around, it's just fine. It's better in that case than sitting around in the woods in the river. So I'll give you some credit there, Michael. But I appreciate the question, because I think about that pretty much every time I cross any piece of roadkill that's visible from the road. I think about it. I've taken them before. I do that a lot, but you gotta look and ask those questions. Now, Phil, since you're a non-hunter, have you ever eaten roadkill? This may be your next big story that you need to tell us.
No, I have not. I have not eaten roadkill. Haven't had the opportunity. Yanni was telling a story about how someone hit a moose near his house, and he just got the whole moose, and it was in pretty good condition. And we talked about that for a while. When Yanni told that story, I think I brought up the fact that when someone asks, well, would you, at least coming from a non-hunter's perspective, the idea of eating roadkill, just the word roadkill just kind of like sets off an alarm, and you're like, disgusting, horrible. Why? But then when you actually stop and think about it for a second, it's like, well, why not? I guess is the better question. But I have not yet. No.
Okay,
seems like it would be harder for me to do than crapping in the woods, though.
I don't know, Phil. You just you're just not looking for it right now. You weren't looking for the crap in the woods.
True.
You're not looking for roadkill. So your next thing you got to do in service to the podcast to bring us the content that everybody loves so much is grab us a wild. It doesn't matter what the roadkill is. Spencer, do you have like a favorite roadkill treat that you can kind of titillate Phil's palate with?
The only roadkill I've eaten would be pheasant. I've had a handful of pheasants that I've hit that flushed up out of the ditch while I was driving in the fall, crushed them, they were dead, and took those home and eat them. But anything, any venison or game bird, can't go wrong, I don't think.
Okay. Well, Phil, you be the one to look at. When you see one, you text me. I'll come over and we'll help you out, all right?
All right.
Okay?
Got it.
Moving on. Are we good there? Good there, Pat? You have any insight there, or we should move on?
Nothing really to add in that. No.
All right, good.
I was just thinking though. I have to say before I forget that one of the most pleasant surprises in podcasts I listened to was the way you have developed Phil into this celebrity. He's just a guy that I enjoy it. I'm sure when Phil took this job, he wasn't looking forward to looking down the road and thinking that he's going to be one day sharing all these varied stories that you've been pulling out of him. But
yeah,
it's fun.
As a fellow journalist, I felt there was a story that needed to be told, Pat. I felt somebody had to tell this, mysterious, mercurial young man's story. And most people thought when he first came on, he was like a 45-year-old man. Who knew that he had the tastes of a 45-year-old man, yet was much younger and more handsome in person. So we're peeling back those layers of the onion, and we're going to keep doing it. Okay, Phil, you good? Just say good.
Good. Thank you, Pat. Those were kind words.
You bet.
He never thought anybody would be drawing his face.
It was not in the job description. That's for sure.
It's one of the great joys of my life. All right, well, we got to get to the reason why I wanted to have both you guys on, Spencer and Pat, is because we've been saying this a lot more recently, but I am committed to sending more of you listeners over to themeateater.com, only because I read almost everything that goes up there, and it's some of the best parts of my day reading some of this content. So I am committed to making sure that you lazy bastards out there listening are taking up more of your free time and spending with us here at Meat Eater. So that's my mission, and I need you guys to help me convince them, convince these people listening, these holdouts that aren't doing it every single day, to go and check it out. So I think we have two really great pieces that you guys wrote that'll help with that mission. So I'll let you lead off, Spencer, only with the fact that you wrote about your home territory, the story of Three Toes, the killer wolf, the westmost of the stories, notorious livestock killer. But within the article, you started listing off some of the names of the legendary badasses that kind of came from that era and that part of the world. You want to kind of give a rundown of some of those folks and why that they all kind of coalesced in that place?
Yeah. In the late 1800s, the Black Hills of South Dakota, specifically like Deadwood, had a gold rush. And at that time, South Dakota wasn't yet a state, and it was about the furthest, I think, east you could probably go without having a state. And so it was lawless country, and there was this attraction of gold that brought in all of these like really classic Old West characters. You had Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, Colorado Charlie Utter, Crooked Nose Jack McCall, who is the person that killed Wild Bill Hickok. You just had like this real collection of characters. If you've ever watched the HBO series Deadwood, those are the kinds of people that you're dealing with around that era. But the most savage outlaw of them all didn't show up until 30 years later. And that is who we're going to talk about, Three Toes the Wolf.
Yeah, did you mention Potato Creek Johnny? Did you get him in there?
Johnny.
Don't want to miss him.
He was a great one. And if you ever do go to Deadwood, South Dakota, there's the Mount Moriah Cemetery, where a ton of these Old West characters with these really colorful names are buried. It's like one of my most favorite places in the world. It's a really cool place to look back on that history and know that you're so close to all those types of people.
Yeah, I went there one time and got blackout drunk at a casino and lost a bunch of money. I missed the cemetery part, though, but I enjoyed the town. Nice steak.
Yep.
Please continue.
So Three Toes, he kind of arrived on the scene in 1912. And he was known in the area because of his infamous paw print that only had 3 toes rather than 4. And the story goes that he lost that 4th toe a year or so prior in a rancher's trap. Now, Three Toes was the last remaining gray wolf in the tri-state area of northwestern South Dakota, southwestern North Dakota, and southeastern Montana. And he really caused havoc for about a decade there. Now, there was a lot of credit given to Three Toes for being this bloodthirsty killer. He would take out entire corrals of sheep. He killed cattle. He killed horses. He killed pigs. By the end of his reign, like his 13-year run of terrorizing the area, he had supposedly cost $50,000 in livestock damages, which today, accounting for inflation, is about $650,000 in damage. Now, Three Toes had this really evasive history. Everyone in the area tried to kill the wolf because he caused so much financial damage. There were stories of people pursuing him for 140 miles before they lost him, 200 miles before they lost him. There were stories of mid-pursuit chasing Three Toes. He would take a break in a corral. He slaughtered 15 sheep and then kept going. The legend grew to the point where he had once hid in or near a horse carcass so that the people would pass by him and he'd keep going. He was so intelligent that if the chase was getting close, he would intentionally scatter livestock so that they would obliterate his trail so then he could leave the area and they wouldn't be able to follow his tracks. So Three Toes had wit and he also had athleticism. He had supposedly jumped down like 30-foot banks to get away from hounds. He had cleared 12-foot banks to get away from hounds. So it was the wit and the athleticism. It got so bad where the state put a bounty on him, $500, which today, kind of inflation, is like $13,000. And as all these cowboys failed to catch him, finally the USDA called in their greatest wolf hunter in the country. And this was Clyde Briggs. He came up from New Mexico and he had a reputation for catching the uncatchable predators. After about 3 weeks of interviewing cowboys, scouting out the area, he finally settled in on a ranch and he set this like really exhaustive trap line. And he ended up catching Three Toes. I think it was on July 23rd, 1925. I believe that was the date. By that time, Three Toes was well past his prime. Supposedly, he had been, at least 13, 14, 15 years old. Now, wolves in captivity, like their max range is 17 or 18. So this wolf was way, way up there. Clyde Briggs decided he would spare Three Toes temporarily, and he hog-tied him, put him in his car, and he was going to drive him to the town of Buffalo, which was only about 10 miles away or so. But on the way there, Three Toes actually died. Despite the wolf being 6 feet long, he was only 74 pounds.
Wow.
And this sheep herder / writer in the area, who a lot of these stories kind of come from, he had written about the wolf, and this is what he said about its death. Call it a broken heart or what you will. Something of this sort is what killed the old wolf. He was resting easily when found. His wounds were superficial, but there was something in his grand old spirit that could not brook capture, and nature, more merciful than he had ever been, granted him his release. Wow. So that is the story of Three Toes.
It's like a single tier situation. I feel like, I'm like an animal rights activist right now. I'm like, oh, I got Three Toes. It's really a cool story. And there's a lot of what's the good literature people can read around it? Because there's a lot of good, you mentioned sheep. I'm sure there's a lot of other things people can step in and read.
If you go to the meateater.com, there's a lot of links in that article that'll take you to other places that you'll be able to read about Three Toes. There's a lot written about him by South Dakota Magazine, which is a great job of covering these old stories. And then there's actually a statue dedicated to Three Toes at Buffalo, South Dakota, where there's this whole long, basically life history of Three Toes and all the places that he made his kills and all the damage he caused, and then talking about that ending.
Well, there you go. I imagine, at any rate, if you're not going to the Meteor.com, you're missing out on this stuff. You had another story that you told on the live stream the other night, Spencer, that you can also find on our website about growing morel mushrooms, or the first guy to ever figure this out.
Yeah. There was, in 1983, I think it was, a student at San Francisco State University who had done the unthinkable. He successfully harvested lab-grown morel mushrooms. Now, this is a reputation that morel mushrooms have. You can't grow them in a lab. You can't farm them. And that's what makes them so damn valuable, is that you have to go out in nature and get these things. And it really makes them an enigma. Anyway, this grad student, he had cracked the case and he figured out how to grow them. But 3 months before his patent was granted, he was murdered in the middle of a night at a city park in San Francisco. So this grad student, he left behind like a super lucrative contract with Domino's Pizza. His patent is public knowledge. Anybody can go see it and try to replicate it. But like most patents that are have some secret formula, he obviously left some things out. And so this man who had the only knowledge in the whole world of how to grow these ungrowable mushrooms was then murdered. And nobody has been able to crack the case since.
And, to the long legend of South Dakota badasses is Spencer and his wonderful voice as he tells you stories of shit you'd never heard before. The baritone badass. Crooked Nose Jake. What was it?
Crooked Nose Jack McCall. Potato Creek Johnny.
Potato Creek Johnny, the badass baritone. Spencer Nero. Well, thanks for that. And please continue unearthing these little tidbits and delivering us to them every week on the website. We very much enjoy it.
And a lot of this stuff is part of this series called Barroom Banter. And the whole idea of the series of Barroom Banter is to make you sound maybe not book smart, but you'll sound really educated and interesting from a bar stool. So that's the kind of information you're going to find within this series.
And that's most of my knowledge. I find that I don't really know anything. I've memorized a lot of things. I've written things down on my hand to read during the podcast. So I don't really know shit beyond that. So that's why the Meteor.com is good. I did get, this reminds me of an email, Spencer, on the topic of growing meat. A frequent emailer, Andrew Leonards, wrote in and accused Phil and I of being involved in a conspiracy. And I wasn't going to read this, but bringing that up, I think it's worth saying. He said, on January 10th, 2020, you wrote about the uprising of lab-grown meats, followed up by talking about it on an episode released on January 27th, 2020. The following week, you fed your coworkers fake meat, where you also talked about the future of lab-grown meat and its ability to take over the world. Citing some statistics, you mentioned within 10 years, it is believed that 70% of beef production could be flipped to the lab-grown variety. It was challenged by not only yourself, but also Mr. Ranella. I think that conversation was the tipping point. Fast forward to this week, and meat processing facilities are on the verge of shutting down. What better time for the lab-grown meat industry to step in and begin their ascent to the top? 20, 30, and 70% doesn't seem that far-fetched now, do they? I don't write this to blame you, but out of concern. It seems awful fishy to me that you bring this up mere months ago, and wham, here we are now. Either you're in on it, or someone is in on it too. Could it be Phil? Mango? Barry K. Gilbert? I hope it's neither of these two, have nothing to do with the other. But in this day and age, you can't be sure. The test tube meat makers will stop at nothing to stop gaseous cow farts from ruining our atmosphere. The other option in this whole scenario is that staying home for so long has really gotten to me. Only time will tell. Take care, Andrew Leonards. So I don't know. Phil, you have any official comment? You're the PR head of the podcast.
Okay, well, I just want to say that if anyone looks at my travel records or my stock portfolios and notice that I made a mysterious trip to Wuhan at the end of last year, or that I sold off and bought a bunch of stocks, just don't even worry about it. It's not a big deal. But anyway, I just like to say that I'm doing well, and I'm excited to retire at 29.
Phil. All right. Well, I don't know. I really don't have any official comment other than this is possible. It is very possible that people will be eating a lot more lab-grown meat in the very short future. So, Andrew, please keep on top of this conspiracy theory. I'd like to hear where you can take it from here. Very entertaining. But, Pat, you have one more thing before we get to Jesse Griffiths, our great friend and restaurateur down in Austin, Texas. We were talking about with him. We talked last week about what it was like to run a restaurant during this time. His restaurant is fully locally sourced down there in Austin, Texas, so he has unique relationships with ranchers and everyone who brings the food in for his restaurant. So that's a great conversation coming up in just a moment. But before we get there, we're going to let you round it out, Pat, with a story of a different type of vasectomy. Phil's looking to get the human vasectomy here pretty soon, at the ripe young age of 29. But you have a piece on deer vasectomies on themeateater.com, and I think it came from Spencer. Did it come from a conversation where you and I were just I am fascinated by the sheer stupidity displayed in this realm of I don't even want to call it science, in this realm of wildlife policy.
Yeah, we were at your desk one day talking about deer vasectomies and how we could cover it, and we landed on that Pat was the right man for the job. And after he turned in the piece, I think we were correct.
We were absolutely correct. So, Pat, you want to take us through kind of your how you cracked this egg open?
Yeah, I was, well, first of all, Ben and Spencer, I really was flattered when you guys sent me that assignment, because I really hadn't been following that. I knew the people involved. I've been aware of this white buffalo for at least 15 years, I guess. But like anything I do, when I'll take everything that Spencer sends me, read that first, and just start figuring out who I know that would be good to comment on this. Also, I follow enough of the research to know what else has been done in the terms of animals and trying to use the human solutions to various animal problems. And, they've tried things like in the past, basically always sterilizing the females, finding, they tranquilize the females, take out the ovaries, do the tubal ligations, these kind of things, put them back out there and see what happens and hope it controls the deer herd. But time in, time out, these things don't work. But this one was different because they targeted the males, trying to get them all vasectomies, and they wanted to get like a 98% of these bucks, give them the, as we call it, the big snip. And it was interesting, just in the background reading, Ben, was one of these issues that so often you see cities doing things like this, and they do it without really knowing what the results might be. They don't call experts first. Well, in this case, the people involved in New York, they had pretty good background from different researchers at Cornell University and elsewhere, showing that the odds of this working out were not good. That it's not, even though Staten Island, this is where we're talking about, I should have said that earlier. It's Staten Island in New York City. And it's about 2 miles by swimming across the river across this inlet from New Jersey. And basically, in the 1800s, they wiped out the deer herd in Staten Island. Whatever was there was gone. But then as all these urban areas start growing deer populations, well, some of them start trickling back into Staten Island in the 1990s or thereabouts, start swimming across. And I think it's by 2014, they had a population of about 800 deer, they estimated. And so they had a growing problem. So they started looking at how they're going to solve this problem. And they basically were told time and again that the only way you're going to control a problem deer herd like that is by lethal controls. You can do it by sharpshooting, you can do it by bow and arrow. If you do it by bow and arrow, using local citizens doesn't cost anything. These are not new ideas. These are ideas they've been kicking around, trying, and doing for, I know, back in the 1980s already, when they started having a lot of urban deer problems. So all the different scenarios, Ben, were there. They knew what they're facing, and yet they go ahead and do it anyway. They go ahead and start spending money to get these deer, get these bucks, snipped. And as I reported, so far they've done 1,719 vasectomies, and that the population has come down a little bit apparently, but there's still deer swimming in from Staten Island. And I think one of the more interesting things that came up when I was reading on this and interviewing people was Cornell University up in upstate New York had tried something similar, but with the females. And what they found when they really cut off, made it so these does couldn't get pregnant. They, I think it was a tubal ligations they did. Well, the does are still cycling. They're still coming in the estrus, but they can't get pregnant anymore. Well, what started happening was they can't get pregnant, but they sure can draw in horny bucks. And because every time they recycle, go into estrus in 28 days, deer can smell that odor and those pheromones from a great distance. So they found that the buck population at Cornell University jumped over 800% in the next couple of years when these bucks started flooding in there and having this nonstop sex action, basically.
Can you imagine that? That sounds like the worst dance club ever, man. Like the worst nightclub I've ever been to.
Oh, and they were able to show too that this is we laugh about because we think, hey, if I were a buck, I'd like that, but in the wildlife world, those things don't always they're stressful. These does lost almost all their the fat in their bone marrow. The bucks were stressed, and the researchers are saying that if this were happening with a herd, like in the north woods of New York, the north woods of the Great Lakes states, those deer would not survive the winter. They'd be dead. Losing that kind of stress, that kind of fat loss. But yet, New York City started spending money on this, and as they were doing these vasectomies. Right now, the average cost of each vasectomy in New York City and Staten Island is at I think it's $2,835, and it just, I guess I look at this stuff, Ben, and I think you talk about a first world problem. I mean, where else in the world would people do this kind of thing? And I love over the last couple of years, how you've been bringing out these different options people take with whether it's vegetarianism or the vegans and stuff. And I go back to my travels when I was in the Navy back in the 70s. Now, I still remember walking down the streets in Naples, Italy, and seeing rabbits hanging in meat markets, and they kept the head on. There's a skinned out body, but they kept the head on. And I had someone with me that could speak a little Italian, so I asked the shop owner why they kept the head on the rabbit like that, and he explained that, well, that way it shows the customers that these are not cats. And you start thinking about that, and I have a brother who has spent all of his adult life as a businessman in China. He knows all about these what do they call them, wet gardens, or what do they call these places where these
wet markets?
Yeah, wet markets.
Wet gardens are a whole different thing. Wet markets.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Get my wet things confused here.
Yeah, just tread carefully there. Tread carefully.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But my brother's comment, this goes back. This is again not a novel thought, but back in the 1980s when Tom was coming home and on vacation and whatever, he would talk about the real world of China, the real world of Taiwan, and he went into that part of his life as a vegetarian, and within a year of working over in China, he thought that the vegetarian lifestyle was the most bourgeois thing he could think of to do. It's totally a choice matter where only people who have wealth have those kind of choices. And he quit the vegetarian lifestyle because he said, most people in the world do not have that choice.
Yeah.
And I look at New York City in this case, and I think the only reason this is taking place is because these people have money and they can't confront basically an attitude they created. And Carl Malcolm did a great concluding thought. Carl was the first guy I talked to in this article, but Carl, as we all probably know, is a frequent guest on the Meat Eater podcast, and he's been in a number of my articles. He's he's got a doctorate in wildlife management, but he got pointed out that white-tailed deer grew up. They evolved as a prey species. They've always been hunted. They've always had short lives. And so why now do we want to turn them into a zoo animal by doing this contraceptives on them? So I'm not sure that's a great summary of my article, but if you have any questions, I can probably flesh out parts I left out.
Well, I think it's just interesting. It's one of those topics, like many of the ones we try to address here, that have so many like different parallel conversations or offshoots. It takes you into like different realms of thinking. And I like the last time, I try not to do this too often, but the last time I interviewed a hardened animal rights activist who I'm sure would be in favor of this over, what they would say is the senseless killing of deer. They would much rather see these vasectomies. In fact, I think I talked to him about that. He was also at the same time talking to me about bodily autonomy. This idea that these animals deserved bodily autonomy, that we were inflicting upon them not only suffering, but we were making choices for them as to how they lived and died. And that just shows, I'm sure this scenario and these deer vasectomies are born in some way out of that idea that there has to be another way to adjust the natural order of things to fit our own psyche in 2020 or 2019 or whenever this started in 2016. So it's as it's borne out by your piece and by looking at the science and just looking at the results. I know that you have an incredulous Mayor Bill de Blasio in your piece where he just refuses to admit that this ain't working and that he's spending money and he's spending time trying to save horses from pulling carriages for tourists. But there's this idea that if we continue down this road, that eventually we'll be able to, through technology or through advancement, kind of control these types of natural cohabitation issues. And, for those of us who kind of have an eye on the natural world and are looking around with a critical eye, moreover, this just seems like bullshit. And it's nice that, it's that's why it interests me and why Spencer and I originally talked about it, because I just think it's born of the idea that these animals have rights and there's other ways that we can address, what are predator-prey issues to any biologist or any wildlife manager. So it's a pretty your piece does a great job of just kind of presenting the story as it is. But there's, you could write a series of articles on what this really means, and how a practice like this comes about, how it's allowed to surface in the way that it's surfaced, and kind of the type of politician that supports it is a little bit, it's obvious, but there's some nuance to it that I really enjoyed. So thanks for that.
Yeah. I think the one thing I mentioned it just in a phrase passing through the article about this was being, when this article was being worked on, was just when the COVID-19 was blowing up in New York City, and you can't help but wonder when we get through COVID-19, if in the future when this kind of project comes up, that people just stop and say, is this really how we want to spend our money? Is this really, as a society, the best approach to these kind of things? We have other things we got to be working on here, but who knows? I couldn't help but reflect on that a lot. They're spent all this millions, all this time, and here we're seeing now how few things we're really ready for. You think, well, we found time for this though. So
yeah. You talk about that luxury and that those modern the modern abilities we have to kind of go down these luxurious roads, whether it be this or something else. And those things those ideas are kind of shrinking now, because we know well, we have to be prepared for something like a pandemic, and we can't really, be frivolous with anything, because there's this idea that there's a crisis around every corner nowadays. And so
you look too, Ben, I think we've all seen articles in the last week or so, about how many people are looking at hunting now, looking at different ways to get meat. because they've been hit with financial losses. They don't have jobs. They're trying to find other ways to get meat into the house. And I guess I'm thinking while I'm reading those articles, you don't hear anyone saying, man, this is a good time to take up vegetarianism. This is a good time to switch to vegans. Because, no, I think in times of crisis, I think people tend to go back into the real world and what are real solutions here. So,
yeah. Now I was getting drunk last night and working on a piece that addresses some of that. If I could find, I had a nice title worked up, but it included like zombies and more hunters and gun buying and wildlife management during the apocalypse. So be looking at for that tornado of a piece that I'm working on right now for the website. But yeah, you're right, man. This deer vasectomy thing that we've been thinking about well before COVID-19 kind of slides in strangely into the current way of thinking, and people are thinking, well, what's an efficient use of our time? How can we be self-sufficient? They're not thinking about deer vasectomies, that's for sure. Unless Spencer comes out with some story about like 4 toes, the doe that couldn't be caught, and her ovaries were made of iron. You got anything like that, Spencer?
No, but I like how on this podcast we've covered the 2 extreme ends of like wildlife management. In 3 Toes' case, you had cowboys killing the very last gray wolf on the Great Plains. And then in the deer vasectomies thing, you've got big city politicians trying to save whitetails when there's more deer on the planet than there's ever been at any point in the history of the earth. So it's
good point.
They're funny, contrasting scenarios with a lot of anthropomorphizing going on in both cases.
And then we have Phil, a lone engineer in Bozeman, looking on the streets for a squirrel or some shit to eat for dinner.
Yes, please. I'll be wearing a bright orange vest and a helmet with flashing lights. Just please steer clear. Thank you.
I'll think of some sort of contest where you can draw Phil, or I don't know, sing a song about Phil. Anything artistic.
You're just gonna drain this well dry, and by well I mean Phil content. People are gonna be sick of me because you keep...
I said that. I've admitted it. I've admitted it, Phil, that I'm addicted to it. I would snort it off a table. It's such an addicting. I love contests. I love contests about you. I'm open about these things. So you just have to deal with it, or you could get another job, but it wouldn't be as fun as this. It wouldn't be as fun as this.
That's true.
Well, if there's any consolation, Phil, I've been in I've covered events over the years, like table discussions, panel discussions, and it seems like when it's a group of hunters and trappers and anglers, and there's one person there who's an anti-hunter or a non-hunter, they almost always start turning to that person for their perspective. And so in many ways, you're serving the same function in a much larger audience now. So.
Yeah, that's true. We talked about this before, Pat, but we've had people write in saying they don't want me to hunt so that I keep my fresh virgin perspective.
Right.
Yeah,
I've heard that. Yeah.
Don't ruin Sweet Phil with your murdering the deer and such.
Yeah.
All right, Phil. Well, we'll look forward to next week's report on, and maybe even an article for themeateater.com about your roadkill journey, start to finish narrative, about 3,000 words. That's what I'm looking for. So that's your assignment. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Spencer. As I said, 2 of the best to do it on themeateater.com. So go there and check it out. If not, I don't like you. So stick with it. And now, like I said earlier, a great conversation with the great Jesse Griffiths. You heard him on this podcast before. You've heard him on the Meat Eater podcast. I think he's going to be in an episode of Meat Eater TV coming up. It's a great, as we look at perspectives during this time, Jesse has one of the most unique pieces of that puzzle as a restaurateur who already, the ethos of Dai Dewey, his restaurant in Austin, was already locally sourced. Everything came from a garden or a ranch or a farmer within his region. And so he has kind of a doubly unique look at what's going on right now. And also, we're going to argue about peas. So enjoy Jesse Griffiths.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Jesse Griffiths, what's up, man?
Hey, nothing new. This last time we talked, everything's pretty steady down here.
Well, that's good. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because your report from down there was pretty great. But before we get to all that, you're in the restaurant Dai Dewey right now. You're in your place.
Yeah. I've been here for about 5 weeks for the most part. Kind of hunkered down here at the restaurant. We're open. We're converted mostly into a grocery store, doing all takeout, and it's been quite the pivot. So I've been here a bunch.
Yeah. You're not sleeping there, are you?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, I was going to say, I bet you did. So tell people, we'll give folks a minute here. If you want to return to our earlier podcast and listen, we'll let you go back and look into the THC catalog and find our earlier podcast with Jesse. And we're back. Thanks for listening to that. So now you know a little bit more about Jesse and what he does. But the reason I wanted to chat with you among the trading a few turkey stories here in a minute was just to kind of get as a restaurateur and somebody who's kind of created a specific niche down there in Austin, like what it's like to run a restaurant right now and specifically your situation.
Yeah, I think you have to preface it too by how ongoing the situation is, and at no point do I want to profess to know what I'm talking about or the mild successes that we've had may or may not carry. So, it's definitely an interesting time. We had 2 restaurants here in Austin, one being a butcher shop and full-service restaurant that was open for lunch and dinner, and a little taqueria that was open downtown in a food hall. Food hall was the first to close down just because it was a really large space and could accommodate a lot of people. So that got shut down pretty quick in early March. And then we are able to carry on here because we have a pretty strong grocery component already, being a small butcher shop with and we carried some dry goods and other things like that. And then for some reason, when we designed this restaurant, I insisted on having a takeout window put at the end of the bar, which for the last almost 6 years made no sense to me at all, in retrospect. And then one day, it like a shining beacon, I was like, oh, now that makes sense. And now we can hand bags of food out this takeout window for a contact-free transaction, which is part of the vernacular these days, which is a really strange thing.
I feel like some people have handed me some liquor out of that window before or something.
Yeah, maybe.
A beer, probably.
Probably a beer. Yeah. It didn't get a lot of traffic. That thing gets used now, and I'm glad we have it. But we sell. It's strange how our fortunes change, and I sell butter out of a window, and because butter's a commodity these days, and along with something we never thought of, which was yeast. We sell yeast for making bread, and we just put it on the online menu. People are it's insane how much yeast we sell. The little things that if you had time traveled a couple months back, and you're like, yeah, man, 2 months from now you're gonna sell yeast out of a window, and I'm like, yeah, gotcha. But overall, we've had no choice but to adapt. We've had moderate success, which I think in context of small business in general can sometimes just mean survival. So we're surviving. We had to lay off a vast majority of our employees, upwards of 40 people, but we were able to hire back 5 people yesterday, so it was a monumental day for us. A celebration. We brought 5 more people back, so I think we have a total of 16 people working now, and we're working hard on bringing the rest of them back as soon as we can.
Has that been, going through that? I know what you put into your restaurants, and I know what you put into your food, and we'll cover some of that in a minute. But I'm sure that was emotional for you going through that.
It was terrible. Laying off people that have worked their asses off for you for almost 6 years or more. Heartbreaking. You can't really put it into words. But on the flip side of that, I will say that making that phone call yesterday and saying you're coming back to work was a nice feeling. It's joyous. So.
Yeah. Well, we won't linger too long on the crappy times, but what are those folks that got laid off? Do they go straight to the unemployment? Have they been okay? Have they been struggling, or are there any particular stories you'd want to tell?
It's an obvious struggle. They're going to receive a pay cut. There is federal help that came down the pipeline really quick. I'm not going to say it was the most efficient thing, but in the circumstances, I think with the number of people that were laid off, that we have to give some credit. It's unprecedented across the board. So, they are suffering. They've lost a lot of their income, but there is unemployment and some additional money available to them on a weekly basis, and then these new loans that are going out supposedly to small businesses. We were fortunate enough to receive one of those, and so that's been formative in us rehiring people. But I think that there's a lot of kindness happening out there. I think that people are being very forgiving. I think that coupled with that you're not really, or no, at least personally, not out spending a lot of money right now. It's a little easier to save money, so I think that that's going to at least mitigate some of the financial losses that many people are seeing right now. But by no means do I want to diminish that, what they're going through. It's our top priority to bring our people back. So.
Yeah, that's unbelievably tough. And like I said, we've had a lot of people on our show since we started. We did a daily podcast for a while, and then back to our weeklies here the last couple of weeks. And it's hard to find. I haven't found any situation after hearing a little bit from you via text that seemed as real and is just damaging as what you're going through on a daily basis. Just from the economical standpoint, obviously health being what it is, but it's good to see you guys are standing up and still doing it. We should just cover, what Die Dewey, was before all this, still that to some extent now, but what maybe set it up to be a little bit more successful than other places, given that, like you said, it's not a time to push that in anybody's face or gloat about it. It's just a reality.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, and tomorrow might be a new day, but I mean, beyond having the grocery aspect and the fact that we had a butcher counter, that was huge because there was a run on protein. I think more so the kind of ethos that we've always stood by have become really profound these days. The connectivity between source and user has really been highlighted. You just can't get away from it right now. We're noticing more just how quick it is that we can get product in when supply chains start to break. So we've always bought our chickens from Jane. We've always bought our eggs from Chris, and we've always bought vegetables from a variety of people. And when this started happening and everything was just kind of a confusing cluster, we realized that making that phone call and getting that product in that day or the next was way more profound because we didn't know when we were going to need things. Everything was very up in the air as far as how busy we were going to be, and so the ability to make that call and have that person come and then cut that person a check immediately felt really good. It was a very basic transaction, and it felt it felt therapeutic or like almost healing. When this, I mean, everybody knows this seemed to have come on very quickly, and we had to go into a mode where we were just trying to use product up for a long time because our business dropped by maybe 60-80% within a matter of 3 or 4 days. And so we were sitting on a lot of things, and at the time it seemed like we were never going to bring anything else into the restaurant. So that first time where the chef and I were talking, and she's like, "We're out of chicken. We need chicken." And at that point, at first I was like, "We can't spend any money. We can't have any chicken because we can't spend money." And I realized, well, we'll sell those chickens. I'm not a very strong business person. I don't understand transactions very well. So that first day when we needed chicken, and we called Jane, and we're like, "Jane, bring us chicken." And she's like, "Yes, no problem. I've got chicken." And she came in, and the whole transaction happened, and it was great. I mean, there was something just so small that to see the money go in the other way, where our neighborhood came, showed up, bought some food for us. We had a little bit of money. We took that money, we invested that in some chickens, and then we sold those chickens. And then we gave that money to Jane, the chicken farmer. And so that felt really good. And it, out of all the heartache and suffering that this whole thing is bringing, I think that there's a lot of amazing lessons and grounding interactions that are happening and refocusing us on important things. And same thing could be said for my freezer at home. I mean, not to digress too much from the restaurant situation, but I think everybody is looking at that, those back straps and ground or frozen fish or whatever in your freezer right now with a lot more respect, because it's like, oh wow, that's 1 meal, 2 meal, 3 meal, 4 meal right there. You count it and it makes a big difference. And every one of those meals that's in your freezer is a meal that you don't need to tap out of the supply for other people. Yeah. And I think that makes a big difference too.
Yeah, I mean, what you've always been about, and what Die Dewey was always about prior to this was kind of like, it was proximity, right? It was being able to touch and feel things, and the hypothesis always being that makes for a better meal. It makes for better food, and makes things more sustainable. I mean, that's being proven out here, not only in the way your business could still run, but just kind of like what you were saying, the emotion of being able to buy, sell, have this, the distribution be like you handing money to someone and them handing you chicken, rather than it having to be killed somewhere else by a proxy and then driven to you, and all the hands it has to touch before it gets to you. So that's the one thing in thinking about you and what you're going through that was most impactful to me, because we know everybody can't hunt. Not everybody's gonna be able to go do what you and I been doing the last couple of weeks in killing turkey. So it's good to know that there's like an example here for what can be achieved.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the type of model that can be achieved across the board, but it is working for us, and it seems like I'd hate for such an emergency to really illuminate how important these connections are, but it's what happened.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing a lot of, here in Texas, we're seeing a lot of like mid-size or large businesses too, doing really good things. Like the grocery chain HEB has been exemplary in how they're handling this and treating employees. Some people might disagree, but from what we're seeing, HEB, which is if you're not from Texas area, it's a big grocery store. They've behaved in a way that you wouldn't believe was a corporate-based model at all. They gave all their employees a raise. Within like a week of this going down, they gave everybody a $2 raise across the board. They've started putting a lot of local restaurants' meals in the stores so that people can buy them to go. So they're supporting restaurants as well, instituting a lot of safety measures, curbside, stuff like that. So it's not always the small models that are, they're the most romantic, and I can talk about buying chicken from Jane, that serves us well. But that's 90 chickens a week. We can't feed the metropolitan area. So it's good to see and give credit due also to some of the larger models that I think are out there and doing great things. Because it is, if you're in our industry right now, it is about getting food to people and supporting the people that make the food so that on the other end of this, that they're viable.
Yeah, it kind of amplifies every part of the process, right? You have to think about, it's not that you can just like fill out an order form and get the stuff. You have to think about every little, link in the chain. And my wife worked for HEB when we were there. She was in catering for HEB when we were there. And I always thought that they were, that chain in and of themselves they were fantastic people. So I'm not surprised at that. I'm not surprised that that's where they would land. But, I remember being in Dewey and just the first time I was ever in there, I was working on an article about your place and kind of how you came to be there and came to have that. I just remember also like going in there and there's fresh in-season vegetables and locally killed wild boar and pompano from the coast. And I just remember like making notes like vibrant and just something about, the walk-in freezer at your place seemed like it was just overflowing with stuff. And it always kind of like, it's apparent in the food, not to just pour on compliments, but it's true.
No, I appreciate it. And we're just kind of the enabler of a lot of it. We treat our food really simply. This is not a place that you go and get this super crazy high-end stuff. A lot of it's salt and pepper on a grill, and, simple salads, things like that. And that's the way we try to keep it. But yeah, ingredients and connections do make a difference. I've always said that. And now it's like, I think people can really see the difference now. And we've learned a lot too from what customers want. Like I said, yeast, bandanas, merch. Those bandanas we bought like a year ago for merch, selling like crazy right now. And yeast and flour and eggs and milk and things that I'm actually really happy to provide. I kind of like being this like nice local grocery store because it's just keeping the money flowing for now. And again, we not to get overconfident. We don't know what the future holds, but we have to keep a level of positivity about it. Just in humor and whatnot, to keep us just above water and doing our job, which is just getting food out.
Has there been any, customer interactions that were notable, or just things that I know what they're buying, but just like the feeling that people get? I know that I've had the weirdest quarantine feelings and kind of some of the existential stuff going to Costco or going to some of these places and just, feeling off, feeling like things are as different as they seem on TV. Do you have any examples of that there?
Well, an overarching thing. There's been an almost universal kindness. I think I hate to describe it as a forced empathy, but when everybody in the world kind of has to take a bite of this sandwich, it does force a little bit of empathy. And I think the restaurant industry has always been what it is. I mean, people can be possibly a little hypercritical of things or speak out of their knowledge base about food. I'm just going to say that, talking to you, Yelp. But I feel like, because it hit this industry so hard. Again, not to deprecate. I mean, we're not frontline workers. We're not in the ER. We're not LEO. We're not firefighters. Anything like that. But it was at least portrayed as hitting our industry pretty hard. And the customers of almost every one of them has been incredibly kind, even if it's just the way you greet and talk to them and kind of maybe joke around or, try to have an interaction with them. That's a broad-based approach. And, to see positives out of it, I'd say that just like, it's just brought a lot of good out of people. I told somebody the other day, I've had a lot of people like call, just these are random cold calls, or emails and things like that. You have a lot of people try to sell you something that you don't need. And then at the same time, there's a lot of people that will give you what you do need. Like some of a lot of the producers, farmers, ranchers and stuff will just find like extra things, in there. Like, oh, here's an extra brisket. Here's 2 dozen carrots, or, give this to your laid off staff, or here's, 4 cases of Rambler sparkling water for your staff. It's like, cool. Thank you. I mean, it's been great, in that context of just how kind people can get. And these days, when we're led to believe that everything is so divided and negative that, when something bad happens, then we really do kind of, for the most part, band together somewhat.
Yeah, I said it's a time for. We've been trying to do this here on the show as much as we can, just like get as many different perspectives as we can on this thing, because it is just such a slow moving tragedy that it doesn't have any like defining moments. Something bad didn't happen all at once, and we're left to react for months. We're just like reacting every day, every hour to it. And so I personally try to like, do I just ignore the slow moving tragedy and try to tell hunting stories, or do we address these things that we're all thinking? How do we address them? Because everybody's going through such different, being in Austin where you are and being in Bozeman where I am is so different. We haven't been. I was looking the other day, our county has 0 deaths for COVID-19. So it feels so different here, than it does there. So it's just good to hear your perspective from it. Have you seen just the changes in the town of Austin too? Like what the day-to-day workings over there?
Yeah, of course. I feel like culturally, Austin has taken the lockdown pretty seriously for the most part. People were proactive about it. And also, it's hard to know what exactly to do in this situation. There's a few opinions. If you go on the internet, you might be able to explore some of those opinions.
Wow.
Of what's going on right now and whose fault it is. But beyond that, I feel like as a community, Austin kind of just locked themselves down. There's obvious exceptions. It's a very outdoorsy community, so people in the streets at night are full of people walking. And our governor was one of the governors that opened up hunting and fishing as essential activities. And I have never seen my lake, and that is my lake, by the way, so busy before. It was a parade of kayaks up there this for crappie season. The rare morning or evening I'd get off and go distance. There was a lot of people up there. And you get out of the rural communities just outside of Austin, there's kind of a spectrum. It seems that you see less masks and less gloves, things like that. And I don't know how that plays out. This is a new thing for everyone, and it's a real lesson in altruism, I guess.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, for sure. Well, like I said, it's just good to hear, kind of how elastic what you've built is, and what it's been able to do, and I'm sure it'll continue with its elasticity, and hopefully we'll get some more reports from you that you can hire everybody back, and you can be, it seems like maybe in the next couple of weeks or months we can get back to some semblance of normal, and you guys have less tables or whatever, and get it back. You have any thoughts about kind of the future of all this?
Well, I think it's going to indelibly change everything. Like when this fabled coming back, when it's, and I doubt it's going to be one day. It's going to be as steep as the transition in was. I think the transition out is going to be a real tapered slope. So it's going to affect the way that business is done. I mean, consider the handshake alone. Like what happens to the handshake? It's like, culturally, and then going to a restaurant, sitting next to a table that's 2 feet away, a server hands you your food. These are things that just would seem very foreign right now. So I think the transition back into that that's the great unknown. And we're not even occupying our mind space with that right now. We're just going to have to let that define itself when it happens. I will say that, I feel like takeout, like to-go food and grocery will be a lasting component. And I'm not sorry or sad about that. I kind of enjoy that. It just adds more to the spectrum of food products that we're able to offer. And if it services our community better, then so be it. So I think it will adjust the model somewhat. I explained it yesterday in that when, do you remember New Coke?
Oh yeah, baby.
Okay, so there was Coke, and then there was New Coke, and then there was Coca-Cola Classic. And I always felt like, Coca-Cola Classic may or may not have been different from the Coke that existed prior to New Coke, but New Coke occupied, I don't know how long it was, maybe it was a year of our cultural collective consciousness. And then at the end of it, Coke was, I think, maybe a little different, but it was Coca-Cola Classic. So when you have these gaps in service, gaps in like cultural memory on the other end of it, you get to come back, and any of those changes that maybe you were thinking about making before all this happened, you're able to make on the back end, and there's no like service blip, or there's it's not incongruous with what you were doing. So maybe we are more takeout, maybe we are more grocery, and depending on people's financial situations, we are not a cheap restaurant just based on what we offer. And so on the flip side of this, we might have to reevaluate how we're able to feed more people at prices that are going to be concurrent with their incomes or the situation. And that's something that we can't force that on our producers to drop their prices. So that's going to force some creativity on our end. If the like mid to high end restaurant world takes a hit, and it's more like mid range on the other end of this, because that's what people can afford, then we're gonna have to pivot to that. And I can't say that I'm fearful of that. It's going to be a challenge, but it's something that we're just going to have to do.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about. Over the last 6 or 8 months, I've kind of gotten. I know you've been to Rome Ranch some, and done some good stuff there with those guys. Love those guys down there. we started to think about, consumption as a larger piece of it, driven by, the proximity to our food and what hunting has kind of shown me. And then, having a garden has shown me, and really restaurants like yours have shown me on the next step up. Do you have any thoughts on a larger consumption level about how this might change us, how we think about eating, whether we do dive in once we can all, the economy comes back and maybe we can afford it, to more locally sourced food? Do you think more people will take up that sustainability model that hadn't thought about it before? I guess the question is, do you think this is going to teach us something?
Yes. I mean, I think that, plant starts and mulch and soil have probably hit record sales this spring. The third branch of our business, NSTC, which is New School of Traditional Cookery, which is our hunting school where we literally take new hunters out and teach them how to hunt, fish, butcher, cook, preserve, package, so forth. It was put on hold. Obviously, we suffered a huge loss in April, and moving forward, we don't really have anything scheduled because it's just so unclear as to what's going to happen. But that said, I do anticipate a lot of interest in people learning how to be more self-reliant, because you look at those lines at the grocery store, and especially in a state like Texas where the opportunities and resources do exist I think in a pretty good situation for most people, that I think people are going to be more interested in hunting, fishing, gardening, having a chicken coop, self-reliance in general, just life skills. And then you saw how many people they're at home and they're cooking. I mean, there's this sourdough bread epidemic that's happening right now too. It's just like, wow. But I mean, everybody has the time to bake, and it's also going to, I think the beautiful thing about that is that it teaches people that were previously convinced that cooking is this chore and it takes too long to do right. I've now seen kind of the beauty in it, and that with a little planning and dedication of time to it, because it's absolutely worth it, I think. That moving forward, you're going to see a lot of people that are very interested in growing a carrot and then cooking that carrot, or being able to maybe even ride your bike to a pond and catch some bluegills and have those with your carrots. And then, because in the past that might just be some kind of romantic notion, and now it's like, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or the fact that it's springtime here in Austin, and there's loquats and dewberries and mulberries and nopales popping everywhere, and people don't want to go to the store. And I'm like, hey, there's literally fruit on trees.
It's right over there.
Everywhere right now.
That's hilarious.
I mean, you can have it. It's free. Not only is it free, but I mean, you don't even have to go in a door. You have to wear gloves. It's pretty cool. And before, like I said, it was just like this, I know it's out there. I don't think can you really eat that? Is it safe? I'm like, yeah, it's safe to eat a mulberry. You're going to be fine. Unless it's on somebody else's land,
Yeah.
It's still Texas.
Especially in Texas, yeah. You'd be dodging bullets.
Yeah. But I think that there's some great lessons that are going to come out about this, and it's like all those activities are going to be done for less ironic reasons.
That's a great point, because I think, the foodie movement, quote unquote, or the field disabled movement, it feels like the New York Times writes a different hipster hunter article each year. It seems like they just recycle that narrative. Like, here's a guy you wouldn't think that would go kill something. Yeah. And they just roll that out and roll that out and roll that out. And now it's, like you said, it's less it's not ironic anymore to think of how to source something, where it comes from, how to get your hands dirty, because that's more utilitarian than it is just the novelty of doing it, which is, I think, a lot of people were like, I can get my meat at the store, but it's way more rich in experience to go do that. But now it's like, well, it's not just for the rich experience anymore. It's more practical to go and get it that way. And it makes more sense because we now know how fragile our structure, our food sourcing structure is, and how quickly it can break down, based on supply and demand. It's as simple as that principle is. So it's a point well made, and I imagine a lot more people, like, would you call yourself the crappie master? Is that the right?
No, I'm terrible at catching crappie. I love them; they're my favorite, but I'm absolutely
not the
terrible.
master. Not the master.
I get lucky every once in a while. And I'll tell you what, man. Are we ready to shift?
Yeah, that was my like. We're done with that crap.
Okay. There's nothing more annoying to me than that guy that's like, "Oh, you like to catch crappie?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, me and my granddad used to go out. We'd catch like 200 in an hour, and we would just on a bare hook any time of year." And I'm just like, "You are lying. That is not my crappie experience." I'm like, there's days where we'll get after them a little bit, but there's also days where we catch two. And I'm obsessed with crappie.
Yes.
They're a big. Locally we have good populations of them around here, and a lot of them live up in my lake. We get after them quite a bit. We go after only in the spring though. I don't have a boat, so it's a very seasonal thing for me too. It's definitely February, March, maybe a little April situation on crappie, but. Man, they give me fits. We'll get after them some days, and then you never know either. You just don't know. Oh, it's going to be great today. No, probably not. And then the guy next to you is like, "Oh, should have been here yesterday."
They should have been here yesterday, guy.
Yeah. Like, we did pretty good on them this year. We kind of took a chance and went earlier than we normally did, and I think that. I learned a lot more about their habits this year, and just kind of this, theory of the spawning in waves, where the crappie don't spawn at one time. I think it's like a 2-month thing, and it's just you're playing the numbers. They're up in the creek, they're down deep, but those glorious days where they're coming up into 2 feet of water and they're just smashing jigs. That's when those conditions are just perfect, and so you just have to like suss those days out, and it can just change from day to day, and a light rain or the moon or wind and like barometric pressure, anything can just totally shift on you and turn that slam dunk trip that you had planned into like a one crappie trip, and you're like, do I even keep one crappie?
Yeah, you're just like holding it like this, holding it in your pocket. I wore cargo shorts. That's nice.
Yeah.
What's your set? You're not throwing minnows and bobbers, are you?
At night. So there's 2 different ways we do it, and we'll go at night with lights, which is possibly one of my favorite just ways to fish. It's just like, me and usually one other person. We use the long rods, we're 10, 11 foot rods, and then little super sensitive stick bobbers and live minnows under lights at night. And that, when they're going, that is a lot of fun. You catch some white bass like that too, maybe a catfish here and there. And then the other way we do it is just during the day is, just go out and get up in the feeder creeks or in brushy sloughs on the lake and fish jigs, typically a jig and bobber situation for them while they're up shallow. And I tie my own jigs. It's another thing that I'm pretty obsessed with. I love tying jigs. I actually sell them at the restaurant. You can get
right out the window.
Yeah, out the window.
Get your yeast and your jig.
Yeah. A jig and bobber. But.
I love it. I got into, I can't even remember, years ago, it was turkey season, and I was catching crappies in Lake of the Ozarks, and we were finding morel mushrooms, and I just remember, does it get any better than that? Like seasonally? No. Nope.
Yeah, like morels, crappie, and turkey. It's a confusing time of year because you can throw hogs into the mix right now. Yeah, they're kind of on the move, and so me and a buddy the other day we were just like, what do we do right now? It's a tough one. It is tough. But turkey, they'll captivate you pretty good too. They're easy to get kind of wrapped up around.
Well, I know. Well, that's like we had to cover crappie. Well, we can't leave crappie without getting your tips for cooking them up.
Sure.
Give us a couple of hot tips for that.
Yeah, I mean, crappie, I love them. They are one of my favorite freshwater fish. A lot of people put them number one. I'm a big fan of white bass too. Some people just think white bass are terrible. I don't understand that. I think white bass are great. And we catch a lot of those together. I mean, there'll be a lot of days where we're 50-50 white bass and crappie. They're kind of lurking around the same areas in Texas. And but crappie, fried, always. Fried fish. There's a lot of different methods you can do. I think crappie are very good with just a very straightforward cornmeal. I like the mustard buttermilk trick where you do just like 50-50 mustard, yellow mustard, and buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, just use milk, whatever. You just kind of thin that out and then just dress the fish in that, just enough to coat it, and then roll that in fine cornmeal. Steve and I have discussed this at length too. Fine cornmeal, because coarse cornmeal will burn. You need fine cornmeal or a masa cornmeal mix if you have access to masa harina, which is the dry, super fine masa. And then roll it in that and fry it hot. Might even cut a fillet in half, more surface area for more crispy. Kind of depends on what you prefer. This year I did a lot of beer batter on crappie, which is definitely kind of a little bit harder to achieve and make it really, really good. There's a couple tricks. Making a beer batter, you have to keep it super, super cold. So my beer batter would be 50-50 rice flour and flour, and then a beer, whatever beer, doesn't matter. Just, mix it up with whatever you've got. A little bit of baking powder gives it extra fluff. Put a little bit of honey in there, and that helps with color and caramelization, just a drop. And then you dust the fish in a little bit of flour, and then you go into that beer batter. That beer batter has to be fairly thin, maybe a little thinner than you think. And then immediately go into hot oil. And if your oil is not hot, you're going to have a disaster because it's going to absorb that like a sponge. But if your oil is hot, and I mean probably 375, 360 to 375, goes into that hot oil, and it will immediately kind of start to puff and get crispy, and you need to fry it until it gets nice and crispy. And another trick, it's kind of Japanese tempura trick, is to take a little bit of that batter, and as that fish is frying, you drizzle that batter on top of the frying fish. And what that does is that adds more layers of crispy cooked beer batter onto the fish. And when you nail it, it's phenomenal. It's really good because, most people's complaints about beer batter is that it's too thick and doughy. And when you can get your beer batter to be 100% crisp from where it's touching the fish to the outer edges of it, that's when you really achieve like that perfect fish and chips style. So,
yeah, there's nothing better than like that moist, flaky flesh with just the right amount of crispiness on the outside, man. There could be a debate around like once you got the perfectly fried crappie, really any type of fish, like I grew up with cocktail sauce, man. Like that's the thing that I always go to. A lot of people are spritzing lemons, and there's a million things you can do. What's the Jesse Griffiths go to?
I love condiments, so anything. Cocktail sauce is. There's not any one that I'm gonna be like, I can't believe you did that. I don't think.
I was hoping you'd be like cocktail sauce.
Oh,
we're going to talk about.
I think there's an ingredient that we're going to cover here in a minute. Cocktail sauce is great. I'm a fan of mayonnaise-based sauces, and I think that you can throw together any kind of like tartar sauce pretty quickly and or a remoulade style sauce. And don't overthink it. If you like those kind of things, just take some mayonnaise, maybe throw some whole grain mustard in there, and then whatever pickle you've got laying around. I don't know if it's a pickled green tomato or a pickled green bean or a pickled quail egg or just a standard, kosher dill, and just chop that up real fine, throw it in there, maybe throw a little raw red onion in there, any kind of herbs that you have, parsley, tarragon, cilantro, anything like that, basil, are also, you can throw in there, and then citrus, things like that. I think that, I hate recipes. I think that people get hung up on it, and it intimidates them to not want to experiment with what you just got laying around. But a lot of these concepts, you can't go wrong. Fried fish with delicious sauce to dip in, and you're all good. And so, I mean, yeah, I think I would lean towards the mayonnaise-based sauce, but cocktail sauce, I would eat that all day long.
Oh man, I'm all over it.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land? Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
I think we got to talk about morels. If you just if you want to get all the information on how we think you can find them, go to themeateater.com. We got a lot of articles there. But once you found them, I think the key input here from you is like, what are some of the ways that you cook them up that you like? I think there's some classic morel dishes that I'm sure you know of, but like, what are the things that are the staples in your mind?
Yeah, and that's funny, because I think if you were like to ask me what's the best meal that I've had this year or cooked this year, and I would say it's a beer battered crappie with morels. I'm
sorry, I made sorry, that was inappropriate noise. We'll bleep that out.
We're about to make a little bit of this segue. So I took morels and made a little just I guess you call it maybe a stew, and there was carrots and leeks in there, a little bit of cream, and there was also a vegetable that we shan't name. It was the pea, the English pea was also in there too, because peas and morels are good buddies. And just a little bit of cream, a little bit of wine, and all of those cooked together, and then I served it with the crappie, beer battered crappie. It was phenomenal. I think morels in general, we have a very short season here on them, as in my experience, and it can be as short as maybe a week or two, because the conditions, as you know, Texas transitions from spring to summer pretty quick, or from winter, which is also maybe just late fall, to early summer.
It's nebulous. You never really know.
Pretty quick, and so those perfect conditions for morels. Some years are better. This year we found a few. They were all really big though, and got a few meals out of them. I think if you want like the perfect like morel forward experience, my favorite thing is just pasta, morels, and Parmesan. Like a combination of those three things. I'm not going to say you have to go out and make your own pasta. Absolutely do not have to. I'd say, you clean your morels really well in a pan with some butter, and you can do a lot of that. And I like to cook them. They'll lose liquid, and then they'll start to that liquid will cook out, and they'll start to fry a little bit. You'll go from sensing a bit of moisture in the pan until where they start to fry again. And I feel like that's when they kind of hit their peak of flavor. And at that point, I will throw a few sage leaves in there. And then it's just time for pasta, and then Parmesan or some other kind of hard grating cheese. I think that's a really nice accent for morels. It could be Pecorino, Grana, Parmesan, or we use cotija, which is a Mexican hard grating cheese. We use that quite a bit here, so to keep it a little more local, like a local wheat pasta, morels, butter, and some cotija. I think that's just fantastic. Bottle of red wine. And,
I mean, I my feeling is morels just don't need much. A little bit of butter, a little bit of saute or fry, and they can go pretty much. Do you serve them at the restaurant there?
On good years, this year. No, we do work with a couple foragers, and we'll have a decent morel season and sometimes a good chanterelle season as well. That's about all we'll see here besides puffballs, which are, they're fine. But this is not a year for foragers bringing stuff in to us. So, and we missed out on that. So, but last year we had a good amount of morels, and when we have them, we typically serve them just with a plain pasta. It's one of the only times we really make pasta, because I really feel like that's the highest and best use right there. For just a vehicle for morel consumption.
Yeah, and I don't feel like there's any, as I think of things, like there's anything seasonally, like a seasonal flavor that is like a morel tastes like that time of year. Like everything kind of has its moment, right? But man, when the morels should be popping here in Montana soon.
They go well with turkey too.
So. Oh my gosh. If you ever, a cast iron skillet in turkey camp full of morels and just a straight up turkey breast, just cook that thing through. Oh boy. I'm going to be making noises. All right. Well, we got a turkey story to tell, and I want to talk about cooking up some turkeys as well. We've already mentioned the legume that shall not be named, the pea. You're a proponent of peas? Are they kind of a middling vegetable for you, or where are you at with peas?
I love them.
I
love them. And they're, there's a pea farm out in East Texas, and HEB sells bags of frozen peas from that place, and that I love. You just take them right out, and they cook in 30 seconds. You just throw them into anything.
There it is. What did you just go ahead and describe? Like, what's the relationship between you and peas? Does it go back a long way? Do you feel a special connection to them? Because it can't be the flavor. It can't be that you like the flavor, is it?
I mean, it's vegetal, green, a springy flavor. It pairs well with a lot of other things. Like I was saying, carrots, morels, bacon. butter, cream, lemon. I think peas play nicely with a lot of other things. So it's for you. It is the flavor.
It's just and like when you bite into it, it just expels all the mushy pea inside. And you'll have to forgive me because it's been a long time since I had a pea. I always tell the story that my wife. This happened the other day when we were going through recipes when quarantine came. I'm like, well, let's look at our old recipe books and see what we're gonna make. Some family recipes and things that we were looking at, and I came across this shepherd's pie recipe that that my wife had from her mother, I think. Shepherd's pie, my favorite thing. And she wrote on the top of it, he hates peas, over the top of it. Over the top. And then I was like, I'm marrying that girl. Like she knew. And I just remember like taking these wonderful bites. You get a little bacon, a little venison, some mashed potatoes. And then every once in a while that pea would be in there and you would bite down on that and everything would just be destroyed.
So you're saying that like, I mean, there's all those good things, like the baconness of that dish, the venison-ness of that dish was completely ruined by the pea-ness.
Pea-ness, yeah. The pea-ness is, I have a child's mind, so that makes me giggle. But yes, the pea-ness is an issue for me.
Yeah.
I like, there's nothing about it. Like when I look at it now, I kind of rear back.
I got a question. Okay, so and we can move on. I think everyone in
this is a topic.
Land is just
this is a topic. This is a topic that I get. I think that like the Legume Association of America sent me an email one time or something.
You got in trouble.
They were like, "Come on, man!"
Cease and desist.
Yeah, there's a dude out there. I can't remember his name. Forgive me, but a listener that always writes in. He's a pea farmer and a big deer hunter, and he's always like, "You better come hunt deer on my pea farm," and he'll love pea-ness. It's I can't say that's the first time I've used that one. I'm into it, but yeah, I mean, I think people generally are intrigued with my hatred for this vegetable, so it's okay.
Well, okay, one question, and we'll move on. Like, what about since it seems to be so texturally based for you? What about a puree? Like if they were cooked and then in a very expensive blender that was highly functional, and then pureed with some cream and made into like this very light, just green. Maybe there's some mint in there and some butter, some lemon zest, and then serve that with a beer battered walleye fillet. Do you think that you could kind of get on the fence with that one, or is it just
maybe close? I think it's the color too, because peas have a certain greenness.
Well, if they're overcooked, I mean, but you can get a very verdant pea color if you just very lightly cook them.
This could be like an Instagram live thing where I come when we reopen the world. I come to Daidu and you just have a myriad of pea dishes that are just and I'm forced to kind of choose my favorite. I think that would be. I try to think of myself as an open-minded guy, but I've adopted the anti-pea stump here.
You've branded yourself.
I've branded myself anti-pea. It's going to be hard for me to kind of back away from it.
Well, I think I sent you a picture the other day, kind of kicked this whole conversation off with just a picture of some rice with a bunch of peas in it, and all I said was thinking of you.
I was like, you bastard. That poor rice. That rice did nothing to you.
Yeah. The rice is good.
That's suffering. I just
turkey.
Ooh. I just did a podcast with a vegan. I should have asked him about the pea thing and see if we could get a good argument. Not only is he anti-meat, he's pro-pea, and I'm anti-pea. So we got a lot of things to figure out. But okay, well, I am very willing to let you, of all people, Jesse Griffiths, fix me up some peas.
I appreciate it.
Maybe next spring, when we're back to normal, we can kill a turkey.
Yeah.
And garnish it with some peas.
I love it.
But speaking of turkeys, before I let you go, you killed a banded turkey.
I did.
To the jealousy of all the duck hunters out there who wish they could take part. What happened there?
I mean, I don't know if they know this, but killing something with a band on it doesn't require any extra talent on the hunter's part.
Oh, that's controversial.
Yeah.
Controversial.
Well, especially with turkeys. I mean, I didn't know that he was banded. I was in a county southeast of Austin, not a very dense turkey population. In fact, I had never seen a turkey out there until he came in to those decoys. My friend who lives on the property, he's not a hunter, but he told me in the spring they will see gobblers start to move out there. Now we shoot pigs out there, and my daughter shot a deer out there because it's a doe. You can't shoot does there except for youth season. But we never seen any turkeys. I think a couple pictures on camera. But he told me that he was starting to see a gobbler out in the afternoon, so went out there and set up, and I managed to do everything right. He came in from a pretty long way off and came up to those decoys, did everything, and took me about an hour to get him in. And I am awful. I'm a slightly better crappie fisherman than I am at calling turkeys. But he, I guess, was intrigued by what these hens were saying. It must have sounded, I'm sure it was a foreign language. But he came in and I shot him, and I was very proud of that. And then I walked up and he had a leg band. And so the next morning I called Parks and Wildlife and got a message saying basically that everybody's furloughed and tough shit. We can't help you. And I was fortunate enough to I talked to the Colonel of Game Wardens, who's a good guy to know. And I messaged him and I was like, hey man, I shot a banded turkey. And he got all excited. And he gave me a biologist's number and called and talked to that biologist. Probably talked to him for about 30 minutes about mostly predation on turkeys in Texas, like what likes to eat them. And then I talked to the field biologist who had actually participated in the banding survey of these turkeys. And they were minimum, they were adults. They were a minimum of 2 years old 3 years ago in February. So he estimated that the bird was 5, probably 6 when I shot it, which is a big old bird. And I didn't measure the spurs or anything. I was more weighing the breasts than anything. I posted on Instagram, and I know you posted it, and people were like, "I want to see the spurs." And I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, I forgot about those." I did cut the beard off, and it is, I think, 9 or 10 inches long.
Plenty long.
Yeah, he was a big, beautiful bird. It's all I really care about. And for an old bird, I don't know, what the research is out there on eating old turkeys, but he was delicious. I had some last night. I ate the tenderloins last night, and they were phenomenal, tender, beautiful, mild, perfect. Again, another vote for turkey is possibly the best game meat out there.
I want to say yes. I hesitate to like put it at the top, but boy, it's I don't know. It's pretty like good. I think of it seasonally anymore. Like it's not the same. June isn't the same unless I have a pile of turkey legs and breasts and tenders and all the things in my freezer. Yeah. Sadly enough, it's August or April 21st right now. I haven't killed a turkey, and that's probably been a decade since that's happened. So it's starting to get after feeling a little desperate right now. Yeah. But what, like, when you think about, there you go, you're in your office.
Yeah, I told you that phone was going to ring.
Hey, we almost got an hour before it did. Yeah. So, when we're breaking down, we did this with Danielle Pruitt the other day, and she just took a turkey and kind of went through the parts and kind of how to prepare it and what to look for. So folks can go back and listen to that. But in your case, what's the go-to recipes? Just stuff that you just can't do without.
Well, I'll say right off that I am not a plucker. I skin turkeys out because the high use items that I'm going to get off a turkey don't require skin. And so in the field, does it make any sense to go through that process? Plus, I've really learned that the faster that I get that meat cold, that it's just like I appreciate the quality of it. I like to process them pretty quickly, and I'll go in and just skin out the breasts, and then skin out the legs, pop them out of the joint, and then just have 2 legs, 2 breasts, and then grab the liver. The breasts I will make into cutlets mostly. Which is what I had last night, just a very standard breaded cutlet, like a flour, egg wash, then breadcrumb cutlet, or milanese, or scallopini, or schnitzel, or tonkatsu, or whatever you want to call it. Every culture's got their crispy fried meat, and I think that that's an excellent use for turkey. You need to make sure that you remove all the silver, those sinews. They are incredibly tough, even in the breast. Or sausage. And people are always like, wait, you make sausage out of turkey breast? And yeah, I'm not going to make just any sausage out of them. There's some more like esoteric, lighter sausages. My favorite one is Boudin Blanc, and that confuses people a lot because they assume that to be a Cajun sausage. Boudin Blanc is actually a French sausage. It's an Alsatian sausage, so it's got a lot of German influence on it as well as French. And so it's bound with breadcrumbs and cream. What you will find about boudin across the world is that it's bound with some sort of grain, and be it rice or oats or bread. And so this one is made with bread and cream, and then really light spicing, a little bit of caraway, a little bit of white pepper and lemon, parsley. And it's a very finely ground sausage. And it's a way to really enjoy turkey, and it'll stretch it too, because you're adding in the bread, cream. And so, 4 pounds of turkey breast will yield 7 pounds of sausage. And so it's a good way to take that like really nice turkey flavor and spread it out. And it's very easy sausage to cook as well, because you poach them first, and you can freeze them as poached, and then all you need to do is go into a pan or on the grill after that. And that's a fantastic sausage. Other things with the breast, fried, brine it, buttermilk it, throw it in flour. As long as you've got 11 herbs and spices in the flour, it's going to taste amazing. And then deep fry that, and there's no shame at all.
There's nothing. It's been a while since I've done that. In fact, I've gone to like smoked honey glazed breast and all kinds of different things that I've done over the years. I've taken to. I should get your opinion on the wild turkey cordon bleu. I've been criticized for that. I don't know why. People are like, well, that's too simple, or that's just throwing cheese and ham inside of a good piece of meat. I'm not sure why people have. There's been criticisms, or maybe I built that up in my head. But I love the cordon bleu.
People get funny about things. They're like, yeah, you put cheese and ham in there because cheese and ham are good.
Fucking good.
And turkey's good. And then you add all those 3 things up. That's also good. And no shame, no regrets. I would dismiss those people as abject purists, and they can go.
That's right.
I don't know what they're doing with their turkey, but I'm sure it's great.
That's been my go-to. But I think frying this year, I'm starting to get really hungry now. May go and fry bird. Have you ever ground turkey and done like just straight up ground?
Yeah, I mean, make things like meatballs are really nice. And again, it's when you're doing things like this, you're not wasting that. I mean, sometimes people will be like, I can't believe you ground it, but it's like, no, the preparation you make from that ground meat should, really elaborate on the flavor of the turkey. So I would make a meatball that would be something very, very light. It would have like lemon in there, maybe mint. You can even grind things like arugula or something in there where it's like light, springy things that are going to go with turkey really well. And then you don't necessarily have to put that in a tomato sauce. I mean, you could take turkey stock, which I'll get to in a second, and just thicken that with a little bit of roux, like a flour and butter roux, and just thicken that up and use that as your sauce for some meatballs, or serve it over rice, things like that. It'd be great. You could take ground turkey and put it on a skewer with grated onion and a little bit of allspice, and grill that and get that nice smoky char on there. Serve that over rice with some yogurt. I mean, there's a million things, and I just encourage people to experiment with it and don't think that don't think you're going to mess it up, or listen to when people tell you not to put ham and cheese in it. It's just silly.
It's America.
It's America, man.
America. Yeah, no, I very much look forward to. I got a commercial slicer, so I very much look forward to like smoking a turkey and slicing it up for lunch.
Yeah.
For sandwich meat. Simple, yes, absolutely, but so essential to just kind of like daily eating to have, a vac-sealed pack of smoked wild turkey.
Yeah, I did that last year. I smoked a couple of turkey breasts. Came out really well. Those little cheap slicers that you can have in at your house make a big difference. Because getting that thinness is key.
Give me the turkey stock. Your turkey stock thoughts.
Yeah, I mean the way I do it, and I like things to be very simple. I will take the legs and put them in the crock pot with whatever aromatic vegetables I have: carrot, onion, celery, parsley, onion skins, garlic skins, whatever's laying around. And I'll put them in there and I'll cook them until they're falling apart, which is a long time for a turkey leg. You think of the workout that those legs get. That's why they take so long to cook. 6 hours is probably the minimum, with plenty of water. Really just fill that thing up as much. And you can also do it in a pot on the stove. And what I'm doing there is basically I'm going to cook those legs and get as much really good turkey stock as I can out of that, because it's very useful to me for many different things, from making rice, making gravies, pot pies, dumplings, soups, anything like that. Is take that stock, pour that through a strainer, freeze it into appropriate portions for your familial situation. For me, a quart is really nice. And then I take that shredded meat, and from there you can do anything you want. You can make some mole if you're in quarantine and you have time to toast 35 ingredients and then grind them. Or you can just make simple tacos out of that. You can make egg rolls. You can put that in a pasta sauce, cream or tomato, or like I said, a pot pie, or turkey and dumplings, things like that. But I just like to have that shredded meat done, stock done, and it's super simple. I mean, you can also cook a turkey leg whole. I've got a recipe in my book for like a tomato braised turkey leg. It's really good, and I like that a lot. But that's a lot of food. I mean, a leg quarter on a big gobbler feeds a lot of people. But simple approach. I take those breasts, I break them down into portions, vac seal those, and then cook off the legs, and then I have stock, and then I have shredded meat, and everything gets vac sealed in portion, and done. Although I'll eat the leg meat, the shredded leg, before I have to freeze. But
I'm hearing a lot of things I want to do this year. Egg rolls is definitely one of them.
Yeah, egg rolls are good
for sure. But yeah, I've done that with turkey stock in the past too, and I love it. It's always people I think we're just like, I think of archery turkey hunting, where people only show the success and not the failure. Archery turkey hunting is very hard, and there's a lot of failure, a lot of wounded birds that go a part of it. It's the same thing with turkey legs. A lot of people are saying they're cooking them, but you never see the examples of what they've cooked. Because I think a lot of people are just messing it up and throwing them away. I mean, it's been a while, but I've thrown turkey legs away before, just trying new things and trying to get creative and just completely screwing it up.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer to just poach them in the crock pot like that. And it's really easy to get those sinews, those really hard sinews out too. And you just let it cool off and just strip it right off with your hand. And it's so easy, and you get this incredibly beautiful, rich, yellow stock out of it. And I think that's just the best way to go.
I love it. Well, I'm sufficiently hungry, and you sparked my interest in pea options in my life, because I don't want to be
a chink in the armor.
A chink in the armor, as weird as my armor seems to be. White Claw and peas. Yeah.
Whoa, that White Claw thing. I was up in Montana last summer. That was weird.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
Yeah. I guess it's not. I never had it when I was in Austin. I guess it's not a big thing down there.
No, and there's no. I mean, and everybody up there drinks it. There's no cultural or there's no divide. Like, I mean, you can be a burly elk guide and drink a White Claw up there safely. You know, it doesn't. It's not like that everywhere.
Yeah. It's a connective tissue, that White Claw. I remember when I first saw a billboard for it, I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Look at that idiot drinking that. I'd never drink that. And then next thing I know, I'm nursing it's midnight and I've scorned the whiskey for a Clementine low-calorie White Claw.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Cordon Bleu, man. It's free country, and you just own it. Own it.
I know what I like.
Yeah.
You know, back off, America. Yeah. Let me do what I want to do. All right, man. Well, I'm glad you guys are doing okay down there. And I'm sure when this is all over, you guys will find the positives out of this, and there'll be new cool things that you guys are going to be doing, and you'll have classes full of eager new hunters, and a bunch of other stuff will be happening that is well deserved. So thinking about you guys and knowing it'll get better.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the support. It's nice to have a conversation about some things outside of the current situation too. So
that's right. Yeah, at least we can turkey hunt. I got to get out here, and I got two. I'll tell the story at some point here soon. But I got two toms that are just pulling on my heartstrings every time I go and take a look at them. So I got to go and apply some energy to how I'm going to kill them.
Yeah, go get them.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, that's it. That is all. Another episode in the books, episode 124, and we're cruising along into May. You know, I have to take a quick pause after we finish recording with Pat Durkin and Spencer. Spencer, Urban Dictionary. Urban Dictionary. Is that a verb? Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, I think it is.
What wet garden means, and it doesn't mean the same thing as a wet market. Confirmed. So I'm not going to tell you what it means, but you can imagine, or you can look at Urban Dictionary and find out for yourself. But thanks to Pat Durkin for joining us in that unintentional, beautiful remark. Really is one of my favorite guys out there, and has a great part of the Meat Eater team, and you're going to be hopefully with us more often going forward here on the show. And so thanks to Spencer as well for giving us some laughs and some good stories. And Jesse Griffiths, again, I say this all the time, but I really do mean it. One of my favorite guys on the face of the earth, one of the best cooks. And I look forward to, Jesse, you son of a bitch, I look forward to the great pea showdown of 2020. Phil, what are your thoughts on, I know you listened to the interview, what are your thoughts on the great pea debate?
Well, I mean, I think you're wrong. This was established in one of my first appearances on the podcast. Peas are delicious in every form. And we were talking after the interview with Pat and Spencer how, we could just puree them and put them on a little rubber-coated spoon and fly them into your mouth like it's an airplane coming in for a landing. I think that might be the way to go. We'll just have we'll have to handcuff your cuff your hands between your back and tie you to a chair.
Here you go, little buddy. That's fine. That's fine. Like I said, it's just part of the brand now, and that's how I got to live my life. I'm not backing down from a fight. So I can't wait till I can actually get on a plane, go down there to Texas, maybe shoot an axis deer, and see if we can cover it in some sort of pea situation. But the challenge remains, so we'll look forward to that. But next week on the show, Phil, is a pretty interesting one. We're about to record here in the next couple of days, interview with a man named Brett Bond. You'll likely know Brett, but not from his name. You will know him from photos that went around the internet, I'd say about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was as viral could be, ended up being talked about on a bunch of podcasts. Joe Rogan touched on it. This was a set of photos that went viral, and that set of photos was at BBB Alaskan on Instagram. That's Brett's Instagram. His father was attacked by a bear 4 years ago, and the bear, I don't know how to say this delicately, ripped his face off, but he survived. Brett's dad survived. Brett killed the bear, saved his father, and then documented the gruesome, absolutely gruesome damage with some videos and photos that you will never forget if you see them. And so I love a good story. I know you love a good story, Phil. This one is cringeworthy and also something where we can learn from Brett's knowledge and his quick action to save his dad's life. And his dad, spoiler alert, is doing pretty good nowadays. So it's an interesting story. It's connected to kind of how our culture has come up with bear attacks and a little bit of what's happened during the quarantine, because I must have had about 1,000 people share that post that Brett made with me on Instagram. So next week, the incredible story of Brett Bond saving his father in Alaska from a grizzly bear attack. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.